Welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, episode 18. In this show, the hosts talk about strange days and strange rays on Earth. And now, the two guys who caused the FBI to lose their hair, it's Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everybody. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Earth Changes Radio Show, earthchangesradio.com, and we broadcast exclusively at Pal Talk in the Ancient Observatory, the official Earth Changes radio room, and hello to any of those distorted others out there in the audience. Speaking of distorted others, the show comes with a disclaimer. If you suffer from mental illness, say it with me here, or depression, be advised that tonight's show will disturb you. If you're a snowflake or a current university or college student, seek out a safe space now. Hi, Steve. Today is our 18th episode, Tuesday, June the 17th, 2017. And boy, talk about strange days and strange rays, huh?
Well, yes, sir. There's been a lot of talk, especially this last couple of weeks, about the gamma rays and about the deep cosmic rays that have been hitting Earth, charging our actual atmosphere and charging the very environment that we live in, causing changes. These are Earth changes that are causing actual changes here on Earth. They're affecting smartphones, they're affecting computers, they're affecting digital software and digital hardware here on Earth. They're also affecting human beings. They're also affecting the behavior of animals. They're affecting the plant life. They're affecting the street signs. They're affecting everything. But you won't see this talked about. You won't see any of the mainstream media talking seriously about the changes that are happening because of cosmic rays. They will say, well, more research is needed, more studies are needed, more of this is needed, and they won't say anything. But it's happening right now. It's happening in front of us, and it's up to us to start to talk about this a little bit more, because we cannot rely on the mainstream media giving this information to us. They just won't give you this information. They won't tell you what's happening here on Earth. They won't tell you about the changes here on Earth. They will talk about the micro changes that are happening on a societal level, about how Kim Kardashian has changed her hairstyle, or how Britney Spears has a new song, and this time she's not crazy. They'll talk about garbage like this, while every day the world is changing around us, and they are ignoring it to keep you in the dark. And that's why, like Rick says, every show, it is up to guys like us, normal people, to come out with these stories, to actually speak about these stories and get these stories to the forefront and get some attention on what is happening here on Earth. Why is it, Earthplay, that mainstream won't touch this stuff? Is it too hot to handle? Is it too much to talk about? Is it too much to think about? When people start to think about the Earth they live on, they forget the garbage and the nonsense. They forget the things that really don't matter, and the things that really do matter are our environment, where we live, how we're going to live on this planet Earth. That's the thing that boils home down to most people when they start to realize that, hey, our very existence is under threat. Then they start to take it seriously. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Nephilim, Steve, all good and well. And you forgot to mention that Miley Cyrus has quit smoking pot. Headline news. That's your mainstream media. Steve and I have been pulling our hair out over these topics for weeks, months, even years. We have been talking about these things for years, literally. And he and I had private discussions that we're trying to report this to the public. How can we gain any credibility? Because we can't find any mainstream reporting on these topics that we're reporting on. And tonight we're reporting on strange days and strange rays affecting the Earth. We've been talking about background galactic radiation striking the Earth, but there's nothing out there to inform the public or to validate what we're saying. Well, that's absolutely wrong, because I am getting a lot of the information that I'm getting is from the U34A conference of the American Geophysical Union, the AGU. You can find their lectures online in the form of YouTube videos. Now people tell you, oh, YouTube is crap. We're talking about credentialed solar physicists in the American Geophysical Union. And they're talking specifically about the consequences of a long-term and a deep solar minimum that also make the conditions conducive to absorbing much more gamma radiation on the surface of the Earth. We have many, many strange stories coming from across the globe tonight. I think Steve is going to start with one that he had that, in Arizona there and New Mexico, we're under extreme heat advisories. These heat advisories are so severe. Now, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Nevada, we're used to the harsh desert conditions and the intense ultraviolet rays. It's just something you learn to live with. You stay hydrated, you stay out of the sun, but these communities are built to withstand these conditions. Now in Arizona we have and New Mexico, we have mailboxes with the manufactured plastic upright poles for their mailboxes melted completely over, or sometimes just into a puddle of plastic on the street with the mailbox on top. Street signs are melting, wires of cable and electricity are melting. A lot of weird conditions. Do you know they're still digging out from 50 feet, 40 to 50 feet. You can see these videos. They were in the middle of May, where they're still digging out from Lake Tahoe and many passes over the Cascade Mountains from California to Nevada. And many roads will not even be reopened this year until late August, and September, October is when they usually get their first snowfall there. So conditions are really weirding out, Steve.
Well, yeah, you did mention the heat wave that's happening in Arizona, and that is quite scary. Some of the pictures that are coming out of that location show that it's not only the sun, it's also the UV rays. It's also the radiation index that's soaring through the roof. Now, the scary thing is, a lot of this plastic, because I used to work in the plastics manufacturing industry, doing polypipe welding, and I know that all of these plastics are stress tested, especially the ones that they make mailboxes and walls out of, that they're tested for obviously being used outside for oxidization, and they have passed all the tests to be able to be used as materials for building. However, they're not withstanding the stresses that the Earth is placing on them, that they're actually surpassing some of the safety standards of what they were passed in the factory. So what is happening is unprecedented. It is unusual, and it is not normal what is happening right now. That's what people need to realize. What is happening on the Earth right now is not normal. Check those pictures out and tell me if that's normal.
So, I'm getting my information here from the American Geophysical Union, which anybody could vet or research themselves, but for whatever strange reason, the complicit, and I'm going to call them thieving bastards of the media, because today I became aware of a story on ABC News as I was driving across the state of New Mexico. It's beautiful out there. It's a little bit hot. Where one news organization and that pride themselves on fake news, CNN we're talking about here, has mentioned the Russian story, complicit with hacking our elections and Russians being complicit with the Trump presidency and cabinet members 16,000 times. And in a recording that someone made of one of the producers, said, there's probably nothing here, Trump is probably right, this is probably just a witch hunt, but it's good for ratings, it's good for business. As long as they pound the CNN story and the Russians, the CNN ratings are the highest that they have been in over a year, and continuing to grow, so they're not going to let this stuff go. Meanwhile, we have the American Geophysical Union screaming at the top of their voices. Now, they're not allowed to talk to the public directly because of confidentiality agreements with the institutions that they work for. But they are allowed to talk to one another, and they do have conferences. They are now saying that all of their models, all of the data, is telling us that we're moving into a period of consequences because of an unusually long and deep solar minimum. And they lay out all the evidence. The bottom line is that they believe that with the deep, now they're not calling it a solar minimum anymore. Get that term out of your mind. What they're calling it now is a grand solar minimum. That they firmly believe that we are moving into a period of an ice age that could last as long as 2035. And that the onset of these conditions have been found in the geological record to occur within just 3 short years. They also contribute some of the falling values of the magnetic field to the increase of earthquake activity and volcanic activity, because there is more electrical activity being created by the Earth's core, bringing a lot more atmospheric electrical conditions, thunderstorms, lateral lightning. Now the general public is actually experiencing and seeing sprite lightning. That's not the end of the story. There is so much more here. That now we're also being hit by gamma rays from deep space, from magnetars, from ancient supernovas that are definitely changing the physics of the electrical conditions in the atmosphere of the Earth, and that the ultraviolets associated with this. Now, Dane Wigington has been talking about this. Professor James McCanney has been talking about this. Steve has been talking about this. I have been talking about this. And many more people are becoming aware of this in the public, but nowhere will we hear about this from our academia, from our media, or from our government, Steve. It's just, and it puts both of us in a very unfortunate position of having to blaspheme the government and to circumvent them and to put out information that they don't want out there, Steve. So we're doing a community service we're not trying to scare people. This is not doom and gloom. This is just your right to know what's sneaking up in the shadows in real life, in reality, which is real and tangible, that are going to catch most people, God smack them upside the head, be it floods, droughts, tornadoes, because these conditions are, by the scientists at the American Geophysical Union, saying going to increase tenfold overnight. They don't know what night that's going to be, but they're already starting to see occurrences of this happening. And the consequences are much worse. We'll get into some more of that here in a moment. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, sir, a very big welcome to CJ4. God bless you, ma'am. You were talking just now about the changing of the physics and the changes in nature that are occurring, that are happening right now. Very, very interesting. I've got some breaking news here from a team of physicists from the United States and China. They have actually got a high intensity. Where this show today is Strange Days and Strange Rays. And one of my first stories is about a very, very strange ray that these scientists have now discovered, this breaking news. They have actually been able to create a high-intensity laser that sparks new behavior in light photons. By focusing a laser that is laser light to the brightness of 1 billion times greater than the surface of the sun, a team of physicists from the United States and China have observed changes in a vision-enabling interaction between light and matter. Now, if you read between the lines of this story, it is very much like they have figured out how to split the dimensions that we are able to see physically in light. When we have this unimaginably bright light, it turns out that the light scattering, the fundamental thing that makes everything visible, fundamentally changes in nature. So we're talking about a fundamental change of the physics in nature of light that we understand it at the moment. This is almost a breakthrough in physics, which I'm very, very excited for. It's early days in this research, but definitely this is a strange ray in the strange days that we live in here on Earth. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with your host, Steve Johnson, and my good friend right now on the mic, Mr. Earthplay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for that, Steve, very much. The American Geophysical Union of Scientists are now saying that the behavior of our sun, moving into a grand solar minimum, suggests that the sun is returning to an activity level that is comparable to the 1800s or the 19th century. Now, if we review what happened in the 1800s, do you know that Boston, Philadelphia, New York, all the way down to Charleston, North Carolina, were leveled by a series of earthquakes in the late 1870s? Check it out. Earthquakes of Boston, Philadelphia, New York. They're very famous. It's where we sustained the damage of the Liberty Bell. But your government doesn't want you to know that. How ferocious those earthquakes were. Also, now this was a little bit earlier in that century, the New Madrid Fault in 1811 and 1812. Now, they had plenty of signs and plenty of signals. It started with small earthquakes, which are now occurring in the Yellowstone National Caldera, but I do not expect personally there to be a major eruption. I do expect there to be an eruption. But at the end of the 1800s, when they were building New York, Boston, when they had good stone and masonry buildings that were completely leveled in these earthquakes. Also, the eruption of Mount Tambora, Mount Krakatoa at the end of the 18th century, or 19th century, 1880s, 1890s. It was a very, very active period, which these scientists are saying is going to be worse than that. Much worse than that. That we could be good. That doesn't mean that the same earthquakes will occur in the same places. But the potential is very high. We're already seeing the increase of volcanic activity even in the United States of America. If you go to discoveryvolcano.com or any air traffic control site for the west coast of America, Vancouver, Washington, and Oregon are already putting out ash advisories for aircraft and flying around these paths. They cannot fly through the Bering Straits at all, or to Alaska, or across the Bering Straits Pacific to Asia or Japan currently. They have to specifically use the Hawaiian air routes because of all the ash in the atmosphere from 3 volcanoes that are erupting in the Arctic Circle as we speak. Now, we've spoken about Mount Bogolov, which isn't actually expelling magma and lava and ash and pumice. What it is releasing is sodium dioxide and acid. It's a very unique and a very strange volcanic eruption, and you know, the year 1984 will haunt us for the rest of our lives, based on the way that our culture is moving. 1984, our government has known of this specific volcano. It's acting. It is the most unusual volcano on the face of the earth. That it has been erupting lakes of acid into the Pacific Ocean since 1984. But yet they felt that it was they had the latitude to blame us for that, for the desalinization, the stratification, and the acidification of the Pacific Ocean, when they knew all along what was causing it. I'm just going to call this Mount Shreve over here in Kamakacha, which is turning out to be something like a Mount Krakatoa. It has put up so much ash in the Arctic Circle that there are advisories on the U.S. West Coast. That means that it covers the entire southern hemisphere of the northern Arctic Circle. These descriptions are very hard to get your head around a lot of times. And I do think that an eruption at Yellowstone is imminent. The evidence is overwhelming, especially when the animals leave. When the animals leave, you should listen. And I think that we should be listening. Now, just because we say the name Yellowstone national caldera does not mean that it is going to erupt to its full potential. I do not believe that is the case. But I do think that we're going to see a volcanic eruption or even a magma flow like we see in Iceland and that are currently happening in Iceland. And the volcanoes up there are just hellish. When these volcanoes in Iceland erupt, it affects everybody on the planet. And it looks as though Mount Katla is an eruption there is also imminent. A lot of news here, Steve, and I got to get back to this American Geophysical Union and some of the things that they're saying about the grand solar minimum and the conditions that we should be expecting very shortly or already experiencing. Go ahead, Steve.
You know, very interestingly, Earthplay, every time you mention the word Yellowstone, as in reference to the Yellowstone National Park, the first thing I think of is a yellow mineral, a yellow material, a yellow element called uranium. Every time I think of that as the Yellowstone. It was also known as yellow cake back in the early 80s and the 80s time around that. Yes, of course, sulfur is also a yellow stone, but I always consider uranium is the premium yellow. I don't know what reference that has, but we hear a lot of talk recently about colonizing Mars, getting off the Earth, because that's one of the elite's solutions to escape here and start their own utopia where they can, and they probably will. A lot of companies are rushing to the big space race that's happening. Elon Musk has made plans just recently to send 1 million people to a colony on Mars. This rush to colonize other planets, it may be well, it may be good, it may be for the right or wrong reasons, whatever, but there's one thing that they haven't contended with. Mars has no real magnetosphere. Its atmosphere is very bare and very thin. A lot of the galactic radiation would be 100 to 1,000 times stronger on Mars. And even getting there, flying through the cosmos, being exposed to all these rays in nothing more than tinfoil or a light aluminum type capsule, they are going to be exposed to a lot of radiation. And believe it or not, scientists have overlooked a major problem with going to Mars. And they fear that everyone who goes there, everyone who colonizes this, will be getting a slow dose radiation kill-off. They'll be slowly cooked over time, over a short period of time, and damage their DNA forever. This stuff has not been researched well enough yet. They do not know the entire gamut of things that they would be exposed to traveling to Mars, and I don't think the research has been done. The same way the research was not done for microwave ovens when they were first introduced. Nobody did any long-term experiments to see what would happen to human beings being exposed to these rays, and the same thing with this. Nobody's doing any of these researches to find out. Although there are agencies now behind the scenes doing the research, you won't hear about it in the 6 o'clock news. Go ahead, Earthplay. Your mic, sir.
Yeah, well, first they're going to have to figure out how to leave the Earth's magnetic field, how to leave the Earth's environment. Even the space station is not in space. It's in a high orbit in the Earth's environment. As far as I know, no human being has left the Earth's magnetic field, other than the unreproducible claims of NASA landing men on the moon. So that's still up for debate. Another interesting thing here, Steve, that I think is noteworthy is how our government and academia have been screaming, jumping up and down, that we're going to have our first ice-free Arctic last year or this year. Well, folks, it's not going to happen. The Arctic Circle, the northern Arctic Circle, is so frozen. There is so much snow and so much ice that even the icebreakers are stuck. That's right. In the middle of summer, in the Arctic Circle, icebreakers are stuck around Norway and above Canada. And another interesting factoid that is never reported in the news, one of the very last things that Barack Obama, also known as the perpetrator-in-chief Barry Soetoro, the first black president after Bill Clinton, signed legislation ordering the United States Coast Guard and Navy to build a new fleet of icebreakers. Why would a global warming president do such a thing? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, you know, sir, over the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing on the cosmic rays, and today's show is indeed about the strange rays and strange days ahead. Well, one of the things I've been noticing is other researchers are also talking about these the increase in steady cosmic rays and galactic rays that are hitting the planet Earth. I've heard both Suspicious Observers and Secure Team 10 mentioning the rise in galactic and cosmic rays hitting Earth steadily over the last year. I've seen a number of articles being posted about it, but now, more and more, I'm seeing a lot of these websites saying that they're actually testing for proposing new ways that space radiation will fry you. There's one there. NASA and an Italian counterpart to study X-rays and cosmic rays that are actually happening in the space. So they don't even know what's happening. So check out these links that I'm posting here. Here's another one. NASA studies cosmic rays to protect high-altitude travelers. This is just people who are flying in planes. We are getting warnings about people flying in planes now that NASA are studying how much cosmic radiation is hitting them in planes. There is so much evidence out there to say that things are happening and things are definitely starting to change. The amount of electricity in the atmosphere, for example, I consider was one of the reasons why lightning strikes killed Norway reindeer, about 323 reindeer last year. How can I breathe when I'm so excited about what's happening? And of course, I'm scared about why things are happening the way they're happening. At that same time, there were a bunch of herd of cows in Texas that all died from lightning strikes. Now, how is it that these herds of animals are being killed by lightning strikes? The Earth is changing. It is obvious. It is evident. There is no way that we can now not say something is happening to the Earth. And indeed, with all this electricity in the atmosphere, we need to start taking precautions. A new Carrington event may well be underway. What do you say about that, Earthplay?
I say that it's very unlikely, as scientists would say, very unlikely from solar output currently happening, but the moment that the sun decides to become active again, you should expect something like that to happen, because it's going to breathe and stretch and moan and groan as it goes back into a solar maximum. But oddly enough, Steve, I found out by listening to these scientists at the press conference of the American Geophysical Union. It wasn't the meeting itself, where they were saying that such things like a Carrington event could happen and may probably happen during a grand solar minimum, which they believe that we're moving into right now, because as I was indicating earlier, that the Earth's magnetic field is generated from the core of the Earth. And without that bow shock of the solar wind constantly stressing and pushing and compressing it, that it has a little bit more breathing room and is creating its own excess electricity in the atmosphere, combined with the galactic rays, that a lateral lightning burst across the Earth's atmosphere, and we've seen many of them, could potentially cause the damage of a Carrington event, or only be the beginning of such an electrical event within the Earth's environment with no input from the sun. It's a lack of input from the sun that allows the Earth to become more active. And we see that that the interior of the Earth is becoming more active because of all the volcanic eruptions. The more metals are flowing at a faster rate within the crust of the Earth, which make it conducive for these electrical conditions. So it's a toss-up, Steve. You know, many of them think that all the cataclysms that have happened on the Earth have been from horrific solar flares, or a comet or a meteor impact or strike that has changed the course of our planet. Well, they're not so sure about that anymore, because now they have the instruments and the geological record, and where there were gaps, well, we can't find any evidence of a comet impact We can't find any evidence of a meteor impact. We can't even find any evidence of a solar flare. Well, it turns out that in these periods in the geological record, when the sun was going into minimums, the Earth's electrical activity actually increased itself and was compounded by what is happening right now, the influx of gamma rays in our atmosphere. We have nuclear waste up there, we have commercial waste, industrial toxic waste, we have emissions, we have the cosmic rays, we have Fukushima. I mean, our environment is in really bad shape. So they're actually saying, as a conclusion in this U34A, Consequences of an Unusually Long and Deep Solar Minimum from the American Geophysical Union, that conditions could actually be more rapid and more severe, and they're actually thinking that most of this will start to occur and be noticeable to all mainstream public as early as September and October of this year. That the changes have already begun. The floods, the droughts, the freezing, the electrical storms, the earthquakes, although we have not seen them to their full potential yet, and the volcanoes, which they suspect we have not seen the full potential of these eruptions as well. So why aren't we hearing about any of this? None of it. There are so many venues and branches. We're not hearing it from roll clouds being reported in Utah and videotaped by citizens. No media would touch it. Although these are very interesting phenomena, the scientists say that we're now living it. It is beginning, that we are in it, and that it won't go 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. As a progression, it'll go 1%, 10%, 30%, 50%, 90%. That it will just increase exponentially beyond any discernment or any semblance beyond chaos. And they think that that's going to begin as early as September of this year, which leads me, I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time here, Steve, a correction in the Mayan calendar. Because it was miscalculated, the actual date of the Mayan calendar ending is September the 23rd of 2017. Just an interesting note. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I thought that people would like to hear that correction has been made, because they're not going to hear it in the mainstream media. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry it took so long.
No problem. No problem at all there, big buddy. Take as long as you want. You are listening to Earth Changes Radio on Earth Changes Radio Network, on the Terraforming Earth Network, brought to you today by our special hosts and special guests and special sponsors, the Southwest Backpacker, Mishkaites by Organites, and also BigWhoopMagazine.com. Don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. We'll be right back after this short message break.
Hey, this is Timothy Paul. Welcome to Earth Changes Radio on PalTalk.com.
Welcome to Earth Changes Radio on PalTalk.com.
Good evening, this is Rob Cash, and you're listening live to Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network on PalTalk.com.
Hello, this is Frank Weltner from QWatch.com, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio. We hope you will participate.
Hi, this is Girl Bond, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on Terraforming Earth Network. How's that? Yeah?
Hello, this is Fluke 2. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. Well done, guys.
Okay, for fuck's sakes, this is Suicide Blonde 44. And you're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. For fuck's sakes, can you hear me? You do that on purpose. Y'all just love to get me to fucking yell. I swear to God, y'all love.
With over 150 million registered users, PalTalk is the largest online chat community in the world. With over 300 PalTalk support staff speaking dozens of languages to help you enjoy your online experience. Meet new people across town, country, or continent while chatting about your interests. Sing live karaoke, listen to music, join a lively political debate, or play group trivia in one of thousands of chat rooms in various categories from your PC, your tablet, or mobile device. Joining PalTalk is free and easy. Go to paltalk.com and become part of our friendly community today.
Hi, my name is Earth Angel, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on paltalk.com.
Hi, my name is Scott, also known as Great Message. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on paltalk.com. Cow, it's been so long since I used this thing, I forgot how to turn the mic on.
Hi, my name is Chuck Norris, and we're kicking ass to Earth Changes Radio at paltalk.com.
Hello, my name is Michael Caine, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
You are listening to radio. What is called again?
EarthChangesRadio.com.
Hello, my name is Cheryl, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
My name is Mindy's mum, and I mop floors when I listen to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Hi, I'm Ruby, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com with Rick and Steve.
My name is MW, and I have found peace from horse shit.
Welcome back to your favorite weekly show. This is Earth Changes Radio, and we are broadcasting live out there, live and direct. Right now, it is the people time to, if you have something to say, and obviously if you have a question or a comment, feel free. Be open enough to come to the mic and tell us what you really think. We certainly have a lot of different opinions. We certainly have a lot of different people in the chat room today, but that doesn't stop from discussing the changes that are happening to the earth, because our audience is you. You are the people we're doing this for. So God bless you, and thanks for coming along. Thanks for joining us right here on paltalk.com. Go ahead, Earthplay. Your mic.
Yeah, and I neglect to say that a lot of times. We're really appreciative to our PalTalk audience in the auditorium here during our live shows. And I think I want to take this minute here, Steve, to say hello to everyone in our chat room and to thank our admins especially for helping out. We have a good crowd tonight. Nephilim and I are here. Bio is here. Mindy's mom is here, one of our admins. Love is Light, our senior admins. If you want to be an admin or be part of the show, come to paltalk.com here in the Ancient Observatory, the Earth Changes Radio Show. Talk to Love is Light and see what you can do to contribute to our show. Red Lightning is here. Asterix is here. Odd, and that's not just an acronym. He really is Odd. Is in our chat room tonight. Kane is here. Suicide Blonde is here. Mooncycle is here. CJ, hi CJ, is here. Endeavors is here, and somebody breathing lightning is also here. Thanks everyone that contributes to us. If you're listening to this audio or watching this video, remember paltalk.com every Tuesday night. We're here. Now, we do want to encourage people to come up to the mic. I have a lot of pet peeves. Are you getting substantial enough information from your media? What media do you watch? Do you watch CNN? Do you do it for the information, for the comedy, for the entertainment? Exactly where are you getting your news from? And do you trust any mainstream reporting? And would you like to hear these stories that we talk about covered in the mainstream media, and why don't they? So there's a lot of topics up for grabs here. Another one that caught my eye, I was talking about this earlier, was that Michael Savage was all freaked out on his program yesterday. He opened his show complaining that NASA did not give him enough warning that a huge asteroid had passed within 1.9 miles of the Earth at 2:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time last Saturday night, and he was very mad. I have to remind you that 1.9 million miles from the Earth is not a close call. It is not a close shave by any means of the imagination. The moon is only between 238 to 240,000 miles from the Earth, 250,000 miles depending on its orbit from the Earth. Now, this object passed 8 lunar distances from the Earth. I don't call that, think that's a close call. Now, there is one coming in next month that will come half of that distance, which would be about 1 million miles from the Earth. Folks, we're still safe. This is not a near miss. It's not the hair shaved off the back of your neck. It's 4 lunar distances away. The ones you should be worried about are the ones that pass between the Earth and the Moon and beneath the orbit of our satellites, that plunge in one side of the atmosphere and keep going out the other side. Those are close misses and very near misses for the Earth. But I can't help get my mind, Steve, off of this idea about the grand solar minimum, that we're heading into not a younger dryas period, which would just plummet the whole northern hemisphere into an ice age, but the scientists agree it's going to end up somewhere between a Maunder minimum, which did occur. So it was in 17 and 1800s, as well as a Dalton event that happened at the end of the 1880s and to 1913. So they think that that's where we're at. That because the solar activity right now, even though it's at a very, very low activity rate, is nowhere rivaling what happened in the younger Dreier. Very, very less emissions, and maybe our sun is moving in that direction. But already the cumulative effect since the year 2007, 10 years ago, we should be seeing stages of a Maunder minimum or a Dalton minimum, where portions of the northern hemisphere should be locked in ice. And maybe they think that this will probably be the first year of one of these events. Now, this has got to tie into larger cycles. They are admitting that this is some kind of a cycle that we're in. A 200-year cycle within a 22-year cycle, within an 11-year cycle that overlaps a 15,000-year cycle. But whatever is going on, because of this solar issue, they are now starting to look at the wider picture, that the trees are no longer growing and they're dying. They're not getting the nutrients that they need in the photosynthesis exchange that they need with the sun, because of gamma and ultraviolets are overriding the spectrums that they're trying to suck out of the solar rays. Like human beings sucking out vitamin A, B, C, and D, and even E, just from simple exposure to the sun. These things are shutting down. The human beings are not getting the vitamins that they once were, say, a decade, 2 decades ago. And these are all in cycles, because they noticed that, hey, you know what, the last time this happened, the animals started to die too. It's not because they have magnetite in their brains, okay? I don't think that that's the answer. But there are correlations, that the jet streams start to move and the ocean currents start to change in some cases, like what's happening to Great Britain right now. The Atlantic Halon conveyor is slowing down. It has not stopped, which is bringing rain and snow and bitter, bitter, bitter cold to the United Kingdom and the northern states. Now, we're locked in summertime here in the northern hemisphere, and as Steve and I were telling you, that some portions of the United States are literally melting, and they're constructed for that, those high solar indexes. are not able to tolerate the new gamma and ultraviolet that is not coming from our sun. That is the thing that I don't think the people understand, Steve, is these conditions are not being created by the sun. So where are they coming from? Why don't people ask these questions, Steve? I don't have an answer for you, but we're going to continue to talk about these topics as long as the American Geophysical Society and the solar physicists are worried about this. I'm going to pay attention to them.
Very, very interesting stuff, Earthplay. And, you know, I get asked a lot, well, if everything we talk about on this radio show, if all this doom and gloom stuff, if this is true, why aren't the government doing anything about it? Why aren't they preparing for an end-time scenario? Why aren't they preparing for something that's catastrophic? Well, actually, they are. Believe it or not, in anticipation of the coming American apocalypse, 2 actual lawmakers in the United States plan to create Christian survivalist centers in rural areas. Believe it or not, they're already starting to make plans in preparation for being prepared for the inevitable. We are seeing a swarm of things happen at Yellowstone at the moment, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more, as Earthplay points out every week. The volcanoes are awakening, the earthquakes are ramping up. We are seeing tension all over the world. There's a lot to happen in this world at the moment. Believe it or not, just yesterday, the Chinese army actually breached Indian territory and blew up Indian bunkers. They breached the line, that they crossed the border in a border conflict. We are seeing things overspill into the world today, and we don't see enough people preparing for what the inevitable may be. I did hear in the chat room earlier, we were talking about the electric atmosphere and things that are in above our heads. There's a huge river of electricity above our heads. I'd like to invite Breathing Lightning to come and talk about it and what he knows about the auroral electrojet. It's very, very interesting information. Go ahead there, Breathing. Mike is yours.
Well, unfortunately, you can study all you want, but there seems to have been only one individual that has ever been on this planet that actually understood what it was for, and what it can be used for, and its potentials. That individual is dead. His name was Nikola Tesla. He was the only person on this planet that understood what that was for. It's an extremely dangerous thing to mess with. Project HARP utilizes the resources from that part of the planet. Most all M-class planets have an auroral electrojet running around the planet, especially when the planet's a big dynamo. You said something earlier pertaining to some animals being struck by lightning. 323. That is a little high, but it is not unfathomable. There's a documentary out there, if you can find it, and I invite anyone and everyone if you can. It's called Electric Skies. I've not been able to find it. It's called Electric Skies. It's the best lightning documentary out there. Lightning actually comes from the ground. It doesn't come from the sky. And when you see a single strike, it's not one strike. It's about 50 or 60 strikes. It happens so fast. A herd of animals close together in the wrong spot at the wrong time with a big enough strike, bam, barbecue. Guarantee it.
Interesting stuff. That's a lot of beefsteaks, for sure. I can't fathom that, how much life can be taken in just one strike. But it seems to me that that's nature. Nature has its way. Are things changing on this earth? I do believe they are. I think things are changing, and sometimes they're changing for the bad, and sometimes they're changing for the good. Here's a good story. Google have been fined 2 billion euros, or 3.5 billion Australian dollars, by the European Union over putting their shopping service first in the Google searches, over anti-competitive movements that Google do to try and stop them. However, 3 billion Australian dollars, that's a spit in the ocean. They have assets and profits of over $180 billion. We're talking about a mega corporation. And that's not even the scary part. The scary part is people like Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Facebook. These mega corporate billion fucks, well, he's thinking of planning to run for the White House. God help us. Mic's open.
Yeah, that reminds me, Steve, recently I just had a friend of mine told me, yeah, I got a computer, man, what's your website? So I told him, earthchangesradio.com. He goes, yeah, but I got all this crap on my computer that every time I sign on, it has a big Walmart emblem on it. And it tells me about all the specials in the store before I can do anything on my computer. I said, where did you buy your computer? At Walmart. So they pre-program their computers. Don't buy computers at Walmart, folks. Don't do that. So yeah, it reminded me. And I really don't have any objections to Google. I'm going to agree with Mooncycle over here in our chat room that Google owns it. I mean, yeah, they have every right to list themselves first. So yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy out there. But I wanted to address, who was it? Breathing Lightning, who's also a guest in our chat room, about these electrojets. We have talked about these incessantly in the last year, how they were circumventing the equator, and they would move in one direction, then inexplicably, without any cause, action, or they don't know why it does this, it turns around and it goes in the opposite direction around the equator. And then it is so prominent, it looks like an aurora borealis is what it looks like. But people along the equator have taken pictures of this and have personally seen these equatorial electrical jets, and the way they describe them is like snakes and serpents squiggling in the heavens. That's almost a direct description of how our ancients and ancient civilizations used to describe these electrojets in the sky, serpents in the sky. So that's a very interesting topic, Breathing Lightning. I hope that you stay with these electrojets and keep us updated, because we can't possibly cover everything. So thank you for bringing that topic up to the room. Also, this year, I think, who was it, from the University of Calgary, Professor Paul Beckwith, who put out a series of videos on YouTube calling for an immediate emergency climate disaster declaration worldwide. A worldwide natural disaster declaration. And he is talking about the same thing, electrojets and the jet streams, because last year, well, it's still this year, the end of 2016 going into 2017, the northern jet stream, polar jet stream, the jet stream around the top of the world, has been dipping down so low that it actually crosses the equator. Now, we've never seen that in science before. I'm sure that it has happened, but this is the first time that we have observed it, and it's already happened 5 times now in 1 year. This is definitely an anomaly. They don't know if it's the pulses of the Arctic vortexes have been so powerful, or if it's the magnetic field itself is coupling and causing this to happen. As a result, the northern jet stream has been coupling to the southern jet stream, which has never been observed in science that we know of. But we're new at this. That coupled together and just slammed New Zealand. They've had the coldest, most bitter, horrific winter in the history of their civilization is happening right now. And that is a result of these jet streams crossing the equatorial boundaries of centrifugal force and the equatorial bulge. We're talking about enormous amounts of energy here, and quite simply, the Weather Channel doesn't talk about it, the news doesn't talk about it, academia doesn't talk about it, but you goddamn know that the United States government is talking about it in those smoky, backfilled, dark rooms where they're eating pizza. Go ahead. Oh, Breathing Lightning is coming back to the mic. Thank you. You're next.
Oh, I just wanted to put in a couple of cents on what you just mentioned. Now, from what you just described to me, I've been in ufology since like 77, since I was a little kid. And back in the late 80s, throughout the 90s, it was discovered and started being filmed, these space serpents. Okay? What you just described to me is what's known in ufology as a space serpent. These are actually a living, breathing, I don't know if they breathe or not, but this is a living entity. This is some kind of creature that feeds on the upper aurora electrojet of planets. They live in space. I know that's crazy and that sounds crazy, but there are creatures that live in outer space. Just because some asshole on this planet told you that that wasn't true doesn't mean that that's correct. Ever. Okay? We're constantly changing our science. We're constantly saying, oops, that was wrong, this is right. Oops, that's wrong, this is right. Oops, that's wrong, this is right. It keeps going because we're inevitably constantly wrong about pretty much everything we see around us. Because, for one thing, we're stuck on the surface of the planet. We can't jump up into the atmosphere, look around. We can't see things with our own eyes without tools, etc., etc. So unless you can be there, then you really can't take anything that anyone says anywhere. And I would like to add that with a scientist recently discovered that anyone will believe anything they are told as long as they are told that a scientist discovered it. Interesting discovery.
That's fascinating there, Breathing, that you mentioned that we're revising our findings all the time. There's a recent confirmation of things we have been talking about here in this particular room, about the surrounding atmosphere, the surrounding globe of the Earth, the environment we live, being constantly fed by the stars and by the comets and the meteors that pass by us. Well, that's been confirmed. A new study has said definitely that comets do contribute to the Earth's atmosphere, to the gases, to the amounts that trace elements in our skies and that fall down on the Earth in cosmic dust. We are being fed, our planet is being fed from around us, and not only in material ways, not only in cosmic ways, but I believe in these rays that are coming here to the Earth. They're changing the Earth. I do believe that we are being fed deep space gamma rays. Earth is being bombarded at the moment. We're going through a massive biological molecular change, if you will, a difference in frequency entirely. So that is quite fascinating that we're looking at this at a dimensional level, not just a physical level, but a dimensional level as well. Go ahead, Earthplay, your mic, sir.
Another fantastic hour has sped by. I don't know where these hours go anymore, Steve. It's like we start the show and it's over. I think that the message that I would like for people to walk away with is, this isn't gloom and doom. We just want you to pay attention and to look at the wonders and the spectacle of nature and what's going on around you. Because these events have occurred, will occur, may even be occurring, your best defense is knowledge, right? Preparedness. If you think it's going to get cold, what do? You get an extra blanket. You store away a few extra pounds of food. You know, being aware is a lot better than being caught with your pants down. So that's it for this week, Steve. Just want people to know what's going on around them in their world because of all this drama and theater that distracts everybody from life, real life. Our planet is changing and we need to recognize that. Not give it a name or a label and ignore it. So that's it for me for this week, and there's plenty more. Join us in our chat room every Tuesday night, paltalk.com. Visit our website at EarthChangesRadio, earthchangesradio.com. Steve, I love doing these shows with you. Look forward to next week.
Well, you know, sir, last week we talked about something quite prophetic, that the Chinese had made a breakthrough in quantum physics, being able to transmit a quantum message through a very, very private communication route that was encrypted quantumly. Really amazing stuff. The Chinese are jumping ahead with their technology much more than America is at the moment, or indeed any of the Western countries. The news story out this week is China's new high-speed train debuts on a Beijing to Shanghai route that apparently takes about 5 million people every month on this particular route. Now, the train can actually travel at 450 kilometers an hour on this train trip. Unbelievable speeds. Amazing stuff where the Chinese are going where we haven't even gone yet. We've got some news stories that are coming out, how the mainstream media is failing so badly. And the majority of it is not because the news is just shit. It's always been shit. But the amount of news anchors that we trust and rely on has created a hypnotic effect that now the news anchors are gone. That effect is crumbling. People are waking up out of their TV, being lied to every day, out of their stupor. They're waking up out of their brainwashed, zombified state because that's the way things are changing. And now that things are changing, the people are actually speaking out. We're seeing a lot of people talking about Illuminati and about the New World Order control. Even Brad Pitt is now talking about the pedophile rings in Hollywood. So things are changing for the better. We are seeing a different frequency, different vibration completely happening on the earth, and that is creating a shake-up. That's how I see it. Things are shaken up. Go ahead there, Breathing Lightning. Good to have you on the show, sir. Mike is yours.
I hope I'm not stepping on anyone. There's the bell. This right here, this is pertaining to what you're talking about right there, Neff. I know we keep jumping all over the place, but I discovered a documentary on YouTube. It's called Mind Control Documentary, New Unauthorized Footage 2016. And let me tell you guys something, man. It's the best of the best of the best. I always review things before I present them to anyone else. Everyone that I finally got, it's 56 minutes. Everyone that I've gotten to watch that, all come back to me and go, man, I watched it 3 times in a row, dude, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That documentary right there has got some things in it. For those of you that are TV heads in the room, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, you're going to see things in there that are going to come to make sense to you, that show you beyond a reasonable doubt that everything you see off the cathode ray tube, okay, or the teleporting vortex, that's what TV stands for, is fake. None of it is real, except maybe the local cop rescuing a cat out of the tree. That part might be real, but for the most part, everything you see in this, you're going to see things like the train bombing in Brussels. Okay, we all thought that was a big thing. That whole thing was staged. In this documentary, they have behind-the-scenes footage where you see them putting people in the train. This guy walks by with huge shards of glass sticking out of his face, and he looks like he's lost. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. He looks really lost and confused. If I had that much glass sticking out of my face, I would kind of be in pain and looking for a paramedic, not looking for my actor spot. And I was looking at it, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? They were actually putting people into it and then having them go to Q and act dead and all this. And I was like, oh my God, that is the best documentary you guys are ever going to see if you can stand watching it for 56 minutes. Come on up.
Well, you know, the fascinating thing is that the people are waking up to this, and they're starting to wake up in a way that's never been seen before. The amount of changes on the earth are happening so fast that I can't keep up with a lot of what's happening. And indeed, no matter where you are on this earth, it seems that things are gaining pace. I can't believe it's already the middle of the year, and it is so cold here. While America bakes, Australia is freezing. It is absolutely very, very cold here. And I can see it snowing here in Western Australia. It's never snowed, but I can see it. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. Go ahead, Earthplay.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do to relax is I like to watch lectures by TED. Just put the word capital letters, T-E-D, TED Lectures. And one of my favorite ones was by a CIA instructor, someone who will interrogate people. She had like 15 years, and her lecture was about how to spot a liar. That is my favorite all-time video on YouTube, by a CIA instructor. And I live by that video. When I talk to people and I meet people, the very first thing that I'm thinking in my mind is everything that she taught me about how to spot a liar. If people are insincere, making it up, just going with it, or not even consciously aware. So you can learn a lot. I think that being here on the World Wide Web, the world truly is at your fingertips. If you want to learn about something, you have to wade through a lot of swamps and a lot of garbage and a lot of shit. But there are some nuggets of absolute moments of epiphanies and aha. I have wondered about that. And I like to watch videos about human psychology. I'm not a very good public speaker, and especially when it's time to do the radio shows, my speech impediment comes back, I'm nervous, and I don't know why, because I'm talking to you, my friends, my audience, people who recognize the things that we're trying to alert you to, the news stories that we bring you, and the awareness of things that are going on your planet. We're not just making this stuff up. You could go and look it up at any time that we're talking about these topics, because we're here with you, in your face, real time, and we will show you where the resources are. So there are some real nuggets out there. I don't know, Breathing Lightning, if I buy all of that, but at least we have a place that we can sit down and rationally talk about it. We don't have to agree with one another, but you're allowed to say what you want to say because you use your freedom of speech in a responsible way. You're having a conversation with people, even though they don't have to agree or even like it. And that's what makes the Ancient Observatory my favorite room, because people actually do have mutual respect for one another. I feel a little bit differently about what's going on with these equatorial sprites and jets. I don't think that they're a life form, but that doesn't mean it isn't true, or there isn't some variance of that going on that we're not aware of. I've heard of those, what are those, EBTs? I can't remember the guy's name. Art Bell used to talk to him all the time about these cigar-shaped things that were flying around that we can't visually see them, but they're there. So I know that there are things on quantum levels, and because we're only a three-dimensional being, we can only see, hear, feel, touch. We see up, down, sideways. We're only 3 dimensions, but our science can see 13 dimensions, and what we can't see in our own air column is there. Oxygen, nitrogen, vapor, tin, zinc, copper, plutonium, uranium, uresium, strontium. It's all there in our breathable air column. We just can't see it. But if you had the right lens, you could see them, and you would be astonished. And you certainly don't want to look at your own skin with a 1 million pound, 1 million zoom optical microscope, because at that point you would see things crawling, dozens of things crawling in the pores of your skin. So I don't actually suggest that people do this, but it is true. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, sir, thank you very much. One of our last stories for tonight, indeed, does involve little chiggers and things that crawl around. Indeed, it involves fleas. there's a warning out to people in New Mexico to be aware that 3 people have caught the plague this month in New Mexico. Yes, sir, we certainly are. We're going overtime today. We got a lot more information, but that's the final link that I have to share with you. So the plague is still out there. It is in New Mexico. Yes, the Black Death, the plague. It's actually killing people. Well, I don't know if it's killing people, but they're catching it. So be aware that if you get a flea bite, this could contract onto you because these fleas are bite these rodents that carry the bubonic plague, and it's just well enough to be aware that even a flea bite can cause something so drastic as the plague. I'm well aware that spider bites can cause necrosis of the flesh. I had that happen recently. A white-tipped spider bit my leg and it nearly fell off. It went really bad, like purple within a day or two. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that's not a mosquito bite. So I went and got it checked out, and I got the appropriate medication. And, yeah, I was just lucky I did it quick. Otherwise, I would have been in a lot of problems. But go ahead there, Earthplay. Do your final wrap-up, and we'll wrap it up here for episode 18 on Earth Changes Radio. This is Steve Johnson. I'm going to hand you over right now to the very capable, the very culpable Rick Chicago. Mike is yours.
Okay, Steve, thanks a lot for that. And for the heads up that we were going into overtime, I had no idea we were still on air when I was talking to the chat room there. But you're absolutely right. We have bubonic plague is a problem in New Mexico and in the Rocky Mountains. Hantavirus from the urine and droppings of mice and rats and other small varmints that live on the forest floor. We have actually county quarantines in the Rio Grande Valley because of mosquitoes now carrying yellow fever, which all animals have to be vaccinated for, and they suggest that people do as well, but I don't do vaccinations. And also West Nile fever, yellow fever, West Nile fever, which all horses and cows have to be inoculated and have these yearly, they're like flu shots for whatever type of mosquito is in the area this year, I guess. And it could cost anywhere between $800 and $1,200 per horse or cow. So they're really, really hurting the ranchers and the farmers. I don't know if this is a real health concern, or it sounds to me as though it's just another governmental tax and ripoff, because they've been telling me all my life that I have to have the flu shot. My employers, yep, today you get the day off because we're sending all our employees down to get a flu shot. Okay, well, thanks for the day off. They don't know any better. So the next day everybody's all happy and giggly. They all got vaccinated. Oh my God. Not me. No. And they were none the better of it. But thank you for joining us tonight. My sign off. Thanks everybody for participating in the chat. Don't forget to visit earthchangesradio.com. earthchangesradio.com, as Baba Glee would say. And we miss him being in our chat room. I guess that's it for me, Nephilim. Thanks.
Well, it's been a fantastic show. Thank you very much, Earthplay, for being here live and direct for the people. And thank you very much to all the chat room admins who've been here today. Our Daily Dose, Mindy's Mom, Love is Light, Orangutan, and everybody who's joined us in the chat room themselves. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Earthplay for being a wonderful host and a very informative person. And of course, I'd like to thank Breathing Lightning for coming up here and sharing. I'd like to thank Chef Carol for the introduction, the listening audience out there listening to us today, and of course the YouTube audience. God bless. Take care. Until episode 19 next week, stay tuned and take care, and bye for now.
And after these messages, we'll be right back.
Passed in the factory. So what is happening is unprecedented. It is unusual, and it is not normal. What is happening right now. That's what people need to realize. What is happening on the earth right now is not normal. Check those pictures out and tell me if that's normal.
So, I'm getting my information here from the American Geophysical Union, which anybody could vet or research themselves, but for whatever strange reason, the complicit, and I'm going to call them thieving bastards of the media, because today I became aware of a story on ABC News as I was driving across the state of New Mexico. It's beautiful out there. It's a little bit hot. Where one news organization and that pride themselves on fake news, CNN we're talking about here, has mentioned the Russian story, complicit with hacking our elections and Russians being complicit with the Trump presidency and cabinet members 16,000 times. And in a recording that someone made of one of the producers said, there's probably nothing here, Trump is probably right, this is probably just a witch hunt, but it's good for ratings, it's good for business. As long as they pound this CNN story and the Russians, the CNN ratings are the highest that they have been in over a year, and continuing to grow, so they're not going to let this stuff go. Meanwhile, we have the American Geophysical Union screaming at the top of their voices. Now, they're not allowed to talk to the public directly because of confidentiality agreements with the institutions that they work for. But they are allowed to talk to one another, and they do have conferences. They are now saying that all of their models, all of the data, is telling us that we're moving into a period of consequences because of an unusually long and deep solar minimum. And they lay out all the evidence. The bottom line is that they believe that with the deep, now they're not calling it a solar minimum anymore. Get that term out of your mind. What they're calling it now is a grand solar minimum. That they firmly believe that we are moving into a period of an ice age that could last as long as...
Or how Britney Spears has a new song, and this time she's not crazy. They'll talk about garbage like this, while every day the world is changing around us, and they are ignoring it to keep you in the dark. And that's why, like Rick says, every show, it is up to guys like us, normal people, to come out with these stories, to actually speak about these stories, and get these stories to the forefront, and get some attention on what is happening here on Earth. Why is it, Earthplay, that mainstream won't touch this stuff? Is it too hot to handle? Is it too much to talk about? Is it too much to think about? When people start to think about the Earth they live on, they forget the garbage and the nonsense. They forget the things that really don't matter, and the things that really do matter are our environment, where we live, how we're going to live on this planet Earth. That's the thing that boils home down to most people when they start to realize that, hey, our very existence is under threat. Then they start to take it seriously. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Nephilim, Steve, all good and well. And you forgot to mention that Miley Cyrus has quit smoking pot. Headline news. That's your mainstream media. Steve and I have been pulling our hair out over these topics for weeks, months, even years. We have been talking about these things for years, literally. And he and I had private discussions that we're trying to report this to the public. How can we gain any credibility? Because we can't find any mainstream reporting on these topics that we're reporting on. And tonight we're reporting on strange days and strange rays affecting the Earth. We've been talking about background galactic radiation striking the Earth. But there's nothing out there to inform the public or to validate what we're saying. Well, that's absolutely wrong, because I am getting a lot of the information that I'm getting is from the U34A conference of the American Geophysical Union, the AGU. You can find their lectures online in the form of YouTube videos. Now people tell you, oh, YouTube is crap. We're talking about credentialed solar physicists in the American Geophysical Union. And they're talking specifically about the consequences of a long-term and a deep solar minimum that also make the conditions conducive to 2035. And that the onset of these conditions have been found in the geological record to occur within just 3 short years. They also contribute some of the falling values of the magnetic field to the increase of earthquake activity and volcanic activity, because there is more electrical activity being created by the Earth's core, bringing a lot more atmospheric electrical conditions, thunderstorms, lateral lightning. Now the general public is actually experiencing and seeing sprite lightning. That's not the end of the story. There is so much more here. That now we're also being hit by gamma rays from deep space, from magnetars, from ancient supernovas that are definitely changing the physics of the electrical conditions in the atmosphere of the Earth, and that the ultraviolets associated with this. Now, Dane Wigington has been talking about this. Professor James McCanney has been talking about this. Steve has been talking about this. I have been talking about this. And many more people are becoming aware of this in the public, but nowhere will we hear about this from our academia, from our media, or from our government, Steve. It's just, and it puts both of us in a very unfortunate position of having to blaspheme the government and to circumvent them and to put out information that they don't want out there, Steve. So we're doing a community service we're not trying to scare people. This is not doom and gloom. This is just your right to know what's sneaking up in the shadows in real life, in reality, which is real and tangible, that are going to catch most people, God smack them upside the head, be it floods, droughts, tornadoes, because these conditions are, by the scientists at the American Geophysical Union, saying going to increase tenfold overnight. They don't know what night that's going to be, but they're already starting to see occurrences of this happening, absorbing much more gamma radiation on the surface of the Earth. We have many strange stories coming from across the globe tonight. I think Steve is going to start with one that he had, that in Arizona and New Mexico, we're under extreme heat advisories. These heat advisories are so severe. Now, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Nevada, we're used to the harsh desert conditions and the intense ultraviolet rays. It's just something you learn to live with. You stay hydrated, you stay out of the sun, but these communities are built to withstand these conditions. Now, in Arizona, we have and New Mexico, we have mailboxes with the manufactured plastic upright poles for their mailboxes melted completely over, or sometimes just into a puddle of plastic on the street with the mailbox on top. Street signs are melting, wires of cable and electricity are melting. A lot of weird conditions. Do you know they're still digging out from 50 feet, 40 to 50 feet? You can see these videos. They were in the middle of May, where they're still digging out from Lake Tahoe and many passes over the Cascade Mountains from California to Nevada. And many roads will not even be reopened this year until late August, and September, October is when they usually get their first snowfall there. So conditions are really weirding out, Steve.
Well, yeah, you did mention the heat wave that's happening in Arizona, and that is quite scary. Some of the pictures that are coming out of that location show that it's not only the sun, it's also the UV rays. It's also the radiation index that's soaring through the roof. Now, the scary thing is, a lot of this plastic, because I used to work in the plastics manufacturing industry, doing polypipe welding, and I know that all of these plastics are stress tested, especially the ones that they make mailboxes and walls out of, that they're tested for obviously being used outside for oxidization, and they have passed all the tests to be able to be used as materials for building. However, they're not withstanding the stresses that the Earth is placing on them, that they're actually surpassing some of the safety standards of what they were.
Welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, episode 18. In this show, the hosts talk about strange days and strange rays on Earth. And now, the two guys who caused the FBI to lose their hair, it's Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everybody. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Earth Changes Radio Show, earthchangesradio.com, and we broadcast exclusively at Pal Talk in the Ancient Observatory, the official Earth Changes radio room, and hello to any of those distorted others out there in the audience. Speaking of distorted others, the show comes with a disclaimer. If you suffer from mental illness, say it with me here, or depression, be advised that tonight's show will disturb you. If you're a snowflake or a current university or college student, seek out a safe space now. Hi, Steve. Today is our 18th episode, Tuesday, June the 17th, 2017. And boy, talk about strange days and strange rays, huh?
Well, yes, sir. There's been a lot of talk, especially this last couple of weeks, about the gamma rays and about the deep cosmic rays that have been hitting Earth, charging our actual atmosphere and charging the very environment that we live in, causing changes. These are Earth changes that are causing actual changes here on Earth. They're affecting smartphones, they're affecting computers, they're affecting digital software and digital hardware here on Earth. They're also affecting human beings. They're also affecting the behavior of animals. They're affecting the plant life. They're affecting the street signs. They're affecting everything. But you won't see this talked about. You won't see any of the mainstream media talking seriously about the changes that are happening because of cosmic rays. They will say, well, more research is needed, more studies are needed, more of this is needed, and they won't say anything. But it's happening right now. It's happening in front of us, and it's up to us to start to talk about this a little bit more, because we cannot rely on the mainstream media giving this information to us. They just won't give you this information. They won't tell you what's happening here on Earth. They won't tell you about the changes here on Earth. They will talk about the micro changes that are happening on a societal level, about how Kim Kardashian has changed her hairstyle.